This is Ken Susi here at Fishman Live. I think this is like the third week that we've been doing this. Today I have a very interesting guest, but before I announce who it is, I'd just like to say, like as I said before, we're all dealing with ways to avoid this current pandemic, and now we're seeing how it's affected the music industry, and it's obviously affecting everyone's lives. Socially, business-wise, now we have a health crisis and an economic crisis at the same time. So please remember to adhere to the regulations in your state. So I am going to switch cameras over real quick and show you our guest, Mr. Andy Falco from the Infamous Stringdusters. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I am living the dream. I'm having a great time over here in Boston, Massachusetts. Guys, everyone who's watching this feed, please, we have basically, we're broadcasting this on Facebook, on Twitch, and on, what did I say, Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube. So if you do have any questions for myself or Andy, please submit it on the live feed where I'm looking at it. Andy does not see your questions. I will read the questions to Andy, and we'll just party with you as well as party with each other. So yeah, where are you at right now?
I'm at home on Long Island, New York.
Nice. You don't have that Long Island accent.
Well, you know, get in the car with me when it comes out.
Are you one of those like recovering Long Island accent kind of guys? Because I'm a recovering Boston guy. You tour and then you like lose it for a while, and then you again someone cuts you off and it changes, right?
It comes out, you know. Yeah, you know, it can come out when it needs to, you know. But yeah, it's kind of I lived in Nashville for a while, I guess, and in Virginia too, so it's sort of washed out a little bit.
It's amazing how like when you become a professional musician. I mean, okay, I'm gonna be honest with you. So my brother got married in, I want to say 1997, and I was just graduating like high school around that time. And I gave this speech at his wedding, and my mother recently pulled out the videotape of me giving that speech, and I sounded like Rocky. I spoke, I had a very North Shore accent. I'm from Danvers, Massachusetts, a very particular accent for that area. So I couldn't believe that was me talking. Like, having been a musician for so long, I mean, obviously you lived in Nashville. That must have straightened you out real quick, right?
Yeah, you know, and I've had the same experience listening to like old tapes or something of me talking. I'm like, wow, like my accent is pretty thick, you know. But yeah, you know, living in Nashville and I think just being, you know, traveling around quite a bit, you just it sort of washes itself out, kind of, you know. But I've been back here for, you know, geez, I think over 5 years, you know, and it creeps back though, you know.
So I've never done this before on this live feed. So before we like talk about your life and your career, let's go word for word. Let's just pick a word. You give me a word, I'll give you a word that you say incorrectly or in your most Long Island-esque accent.
Oh,
I'll start off. Ready? I'm gonna say that I'll say Shoppy Maka. I will write my name with a Shoppy Maka.
a shoppy market. I'm afraid to say some of the words I might say because they might not be appropriate at this time of day for some of the viewers.
As long as it's not going to get you in trouble. I mean, do you say coffee?
Yeah, I think sometimes maybe I say coffee, you know, some coffee, some, you know, but I don't think I say like coffee or anything like that. I'm pretty sure it would probably just be like, yeah, I'm going to make some coffee.
Yeah. What about
you know,
like beautiful? I think a lot of you guys have a hard time saying beautiful, right?
Beautiful. Let's see. Beautiful. Beautiful. I mean, I remember, yeah, like I remember like my grandmother, well, she, you know, they were like old school New Yorkers, but it would be like they wouldn't say bottle. She'd say like bottle.
Bottle. My grandmother
Bottle.
did that.
Yeah.
She said potato instead of potato.
Yeah, potato. Yeah.
I would narrow myself down with some words like betta with 2 D's, flowers, I would say, quarter, parking lot.
What do you drink like when you're thirsty?
Coffee or water. I say water, but I would say water. God, I'm from Danvers, Massachusetts, but it's Danvers. We say it like that. I live near Worcester. I said one the other day, and my chick like just I don't know. She threw me out of the car. It was so bad. I can't remember what it was. But yeah, we have interesting. Definitely Boston and Long Island have
There's a parallel.
It's a parallel there for sure. So let's talk about like what you're doing now. Like I mean, obviously this whole virus thing is hit. Obviously, there's a lot of confusion. People are home. What are you doing to keep your family? Yeah, I assume you have family close to you because you're from
Yes.
Long Island. What are you guys doing over
Yep.
there?
So I live with my wife and my daughter, and we're just hunkered down. We're doing the school thing. It's like homeschooling that my wife is very diligent with. Every day during the week, and it's like a regular schedule.
Yep.
And she gets the materials from the school, and so you're it's like a homeschooling thing. I would say I'm probably the recess and the gym teacher, so we go out front and ride skateboards
Yep.
for. But you know, we're doing that, and I'm really just kind of been practicing and trying to write, as much as I can. And I've been working with the band, the Dusters. We've been sort of working on a recording project remotely, and I kind of start the tracks here. And then, with the click, which is, we don't normally ever record with the click, but, in this case, it's kind of necessary, but it's kind of working, and actually kind of fun because as I get the tracks from the other guys and start putting them together, it starts to sound like the Dusters, and it's kind of neat. So that's been a fun project to work on, and I've been going also through old files, old demos and songs, and I might actually release some of that stuff just on my own, just because it's there, and why not just put some music out that normally you wouldn't,
Yeah.
and you know, really practicing some stuff, on the instruments, and I work with Bourgeois Guitars, which is up in Maine,
Yep.
and so they actually, there's a new model that they sent my way that just to try out and check out. So I've been kind of working with that. It's been really fun, and so there's through all this, and it is, like we talked a little bit before, just how, through all this, obviously there's a lot of, bad stuff with which is happening right now, of course.
Yeah.
And it's crazy, New York is really bad,
It's the hot spot
um,
right now.
yeah, and it's really sad, and it's crazy. And honestly, I have to say, not to offend anybody, but to see these people out there protesting and everything is just absurd, because there's when you see what's happening, in real life with the hospitals and everything like that, it's just insane to me that you would want to protest any kind of measures that are being taken to try to stop this thing. But that being said, we don't have to go into that whole thing. But with all that this crazy stuff that's going on, I'd like to just talk about the silver linings,
Yeah.
because there are silver linings. And I mean, I haven't spent this much time home with my family, with this length of time, you know I can't ever, maybe, I mean, we've been touring for many years, and you know how that goes, so, getting to spend real quality time, and really just focus on, what's right in front of you for a minute. And I think that's a silver lining, and so we've been also trying to enjoy that time, because you may never get this time like this again, so
Yeah, you literally like we're living in a
anyway.
time where like even my parents are a little bit older. They're in their 70s. So, you know, they're the ones that are the hardest to keep home, right? They're the ones that,
Yeah,
totally disregard, whatever the government says. They think everything's a conspiracy. But like, yeah, you're like they
yeah,
haven't lived through anything like this. We haven't lived through anything like this. And it's kind of amazing to think about the fact that like you've always, how it is, like whether you were at school or whether you were on tour and it's just one of those days where you weren't feeling well, you just didn't want to go or do something or do your job, and you're like, oh, I wish I could stay home. Like now you've got a month of it, which is cool, but people still can't sit down and
no, yeah, I mean, it's, and that's the thing. I'm the same way. My parents are older too, and at first it was kind of like, no, you really can't go to the supermarket.
yeah.
You really, because they're at risk the most, and but they've been, now that everyone's kind of settled into it all, and we do, nowadays, we have this kind of technology, right? Like Zoom or whatever. We do family Zooms every week, and we get to communicate that way. Our daughter will like FaceTime and play Roblox, with her like grandmother, for example, so that
Yep.
she's not only getting the FaceTime, but also some sort of spatial sort of play with these, characters that they can, you know, there's ways to sort of try to make the most of it, and be home, and and like, nobody wants to go back to work more than I do, but
Yeah.
it's just, not at the risk of making this go on longer, and not at the risk of maybe putting people in danger. And then I think that's got to come first, no matter what.
Yeah, it's kind of funny you were saying that. You're more so the recess parent in the equation. Did you ever see yourself as being a physical education teacher in your life?
No, we never did skateboarding in phys ed either. I mean, you're talking to a guy who failed gym twice, so and, so sorry, Doc Doherty, but yeah, I did fail twice. Anyway, that's a whole other story.
So you got to tell me, but listen, it's funny to me when you say people are protesting outside of New York City when you are in one of the worst areas for this. How it
Yeah.
like the government is clearly telling people to stay home and stay away from each other. Like when you see people protesting, are they spread out? Like how are they
Well,
protesting?
I haven't really been out, so I haven't really seen it in this area. Although, however, even like a couple weeks ago when you went out I live, a couple blocks from the Bay here, and, went down to kind of get fresh air. And, the people were clearly letting their teenagers all hang out in these groups.
Yeah.
And now our area, I'm out in Suffolk County on Long Island, is very, very much a hot spot. And it's probably because of those days when, they were all going back home, and so what I was referring to specifically was today I was watching a thing where they're protesting, I think in Philadelphia or somewhere in Pennsylvania. I guess must have been Philly.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of people out there, not wearing masks or anything, protesting, the shutdown is unconstitutional and stuff. And it's like, I mean, if you can't see what's going on and understand like what's happening, I don't know what to say really. Yeah. But like, or if you're trying to politicize it, and, a lot of them are saying, that the Democrats are doing, it's like, it's so, to me, absurd. But like, it just, I don't know. To me, it's very simple. It's just, this has to be controlled.
Yeah.
And, the only way to do it is to sort of let it sort of, everyone stay away from each other and settle. And, like I said, I understand that, people do want to go to work, and we all do,
yeah.
And we're in the same boat, so but it's got to be safe.
Yeah, it's funny to think that if this was planned, like, come on, like, why would the government want to spend billions of dollars on something planned like this catastrophe? But hey, to each his own. Everyone has their own opinion. They have the right to their own opinion.
That's it.
Well, prior, right when we got on this feed, it's actually pretty funny. You and I, we've actually never met, so it's cool that you did make a comment, and I want to say that I agree with you because we didn't really discuss this, but what you do and where you're from. I mean, I know a lot about Long Island in the sense that I've toured there with my heavy metal band, and I know that there's a huge underground scene for like hard rock, heavy metal, punk rock in Boston, in New York. Actually, it's such a big scene that it's kind of like there's obviously been a New York-Boston rivalry, just like everything else. But you play like you made a comment that like metal and bluegrass and that type of stuff is somewhat the same. But I'm going to agree with you in the sense that they're both very niche kind of music, styles of music. And but the thing is that you live in an area where I feel like you had to move, right? Like I want to understand like where you came from and how you even got into playing the style of music, but how did you even get anywhere? Because like there's nowhere to play for that type of stuff other than if you're a national act, right, in Long Island.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think nowadays it's a lot different than it was. But when I started out, it was getting into bluegrass, which is a little bit of a long story, but just to summarize, I mean, my older brother, Tom, is, big influence on my musical taste. I mean, from a young age, from, pulling me out of school and, when I was 14 to take me to my first Dead show in Hartford, Connecticut, and that was 1986.
Yeah.
But like, from a young age, and even from, his influence on me playing guitar. I mean, he was a guitar player and got me into it. But he also, had gotten into bluegrass a little bit. So there was that influence coming from him as and I was like older when I was getting into bluegrass. And then I would say, my cousin Chris also he had moved to Ohio, got turned on the bluegrass and was coming back and, starting to get into bluegrass. And then, we started playing some of this in the electric band I had here on like a Sunday, every other gig. And I met a guy named Buddy Miriam, who's a Long Island bluegrass musician, and he has his own story too, which is amazing. But I mean, in a nutshell, he started playing mandolin in the 70s, and he met Monroe, and on the same day he got struck by lightning, and for real. And Monroe sort of found out about it, and they became friends, and
Yeah.
so he has a very unique sort of, had a very unique mentor. Bill Monroe is the father of bluegrass, and so when I met Buddy, he kind of came into our scene, and we started all playing together and jamming. He was a big influence on sort of turning us on to, real bluegrass, and he has had a band since the 70s, a bluegrass band. And I did time in his band. I had a tenure in his band as well. And that was the first bluegrass band I ever played in for years before I moved to Nashville, and so that was kind of like the training ground. But he was, doing a lot of gigs around here.
Yep.
And we were doing that, and now it's actually, in the last several years since then, I think bluegrass music has sort of reached a wider audience. Just, I think like a lot of the weird sort of associations to like bluegrass, and like, around here anyway, there'd be like associations to like Deliverance or something, I think a lot of that sort of was shed, I think, with bands like, Mumford and Sons and Old Crow Medicine Show sort of becoming more mainstream, and people getting used to seeing banjos and fiddles. And I think it became, more of like an accepted thing, and just general roots Americana music,
Well, that's kind of like where I'm going with this. So let's see if our stories align. So when I was a kid, I listened to like the Beatles and the Beach Boys and all that stuff, and you kind of like graduate to the point where you're like, oh, I want something a little heavier. Kiss, Winger, like the hair metal kind of thing, and then you're like, wow, I found Iron Maiden. That's pretty cool. Whoa, I found Slayer. I shouldn't be listening to this. This is evil. Like stuff like that, and you keep going in that natural progression. But when I was coming up, hardcore and heavy metal took a huge, like it was on the rise, but it was kind of like there was a lull from the time that Ozzy was playing and doing all the that type of heavy metal, and like Pantera kind of opened it back up, and then there was still like it was all really pushing the underground. Was there, I mean, you're naming bands that were like relevant from like now and like what 10, 15 years ago, like where they really hit mainstream success. Was there like this underground scene that was kind of bubbling at that time that you could foresee it, or were you just kind of playing the style of music you played and was just like, oh, well, you know what, I just love playing and let's see where this gets me?
Yeah, well, there was like a New York scene, which is where I met some of the Infamous Stringdusters on the sort of New York, not only in the city but like upstate, and like the festivals and bluegrass festivals. And that was happening. And I, for us, like your progression is not unlike mine, where it was kind of like I grew up listening to the Beatles and all of that. I have all of the Beatles stuff on vinyl, my parents' vinyl and stuff. That's what we grew up listening to. But then like getting into the Grateful Dead really was a big introduction into American roots music, kind of. I mean, they were playing country songs and with Old and the Way and stuff. There was bluegrass, and so you can kind of find those connections through that music, which is for me, it was listening to the Grateful Dead, and at a young age listening to like one of the jazz stations doing a blues show and hearing I think Reverend Gary Davis coming on. But I remember he was playing maybe Samson Delilah or some sort of a old blues song that the Grateful Dead did. And I remember very clearly having a moment where I was saying to myself, how cool that this old blues guy is doing a Grateful Dead song.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, and like, as I was thinking that, almost simultaneously, my brain went, oh, wait, no. Oh, okay. So then like from the Allman Brothers Band and Grateful Dead, we started working kind of backwards, like, well, where did that song come from? Okay. Getting really heavy into blues, B.B. King and all that, stuff. And I got deep into like Mike Bloomfield is like one of my favorite musicians that ever lived, but like, but also the bluegrass stuff, and like working backwards that way. And then that coinciding with, sort of actually meeting somebody, Buddy Miriam, who really had a good foundation, and a real foundation in bluegrass and real understanding of the music. We were able to sort of, learn about the bigger, more, maybe at the time more underground, but Nashville at that time, and still, but I mean, when we moved to Nashville, there's sort of, it was incredible. I mean, the bluegrass scene was just, house parties, playing with your heroes, getting to see, getting to know, and learn. I mean, you went there to learn, really, and not necessarily, I mean, hoping to maybe have a career, but you really going to learn and really get your sort of master's degree in the music. And it also turned me on to real country music because, real country music was, me growing up here was hard. You didn't hear on the radio,
Yeah.
but then you move to Nashville and you hear actual, the real country music, real classic country music and stuff. And you go, oh, okay, yeah, okay, I get why, what's great about that, so.
So that's another thing I want to know because I'm not really that embedded in the bluegrass scene. But for instance, if you're like if like in heavy metal terms, right? Like if you were to play before Slayer, there's certain fans that are like, I don't want to hear anything except for Slayer, right? And like Fish and Grateful Dead, and they're very technical and they're jammy and stuff. And you're naming all these bands. Is there ever a scenario where you're like on stage and like in the earlier days or whatever, maybe people don't know your band or what you're doing? Is there an elitist kind of like you're not really country or you're not really, you know, you guys are not really that technically, you guys don't, do the improv thing that well, or like are
Yeah,
there
no, there
snobs?
is actually a lot of that, and there's always, and I think probably since as long as bluegrass has been around, there's always been this. It's very much like the jazz thing, where there's like, oh, that's not, oh, what is jazz? Well, that's not jazz. Well, it should sound like bebop. It should sound like Charlie Parker.
Yeah,
There's a lot of that happens in bluegrass, and there were a lot of bands that had sort of done it on their own, particularly probably I would say like out of Colorado, that sort of this like later generation bands that weren't really getting the respect from the trad scene, and it's still that day
yeah,
now. It's still that way now. I mean, there's still this rub like trad bluegrass, versus like what they call it the big tent bluegrass, and it's a very bizarre thing because why would you know what does it matter? There's all kinds of bluegrass. You can play trad bluegrass, and you can play contemporary bluegrass. You can play jammy bluegrass, and
yeah,
what does it bother you if that band exists?
yeah,
But like you say, I mean, that's just the thing. You're always going to have that. I think, and it's because like jazz, when you have these like root style of musics, you know, this root style music, I think there becomes an ownership to it.
yeah,
But the truth of the matter is, you know, the truth of the matter is that every tradition starts with innovation, right? So like
totally,
Monroe was like innovating and he was doing new stuff and he didn't, I don't think necessarily wanted people to sound like him. That was his music, right? In the
yeah,
beginning. And, you know, and if you play the music with that spirit,
yeah,
yeah, it's going to sound different and it should,
yeah,
and there's nothing wrong with the traditional stuff, but there's also nothing wrong with taking it in another direction. And so, yeah, I think that exists. We all in our band, we all lived in Nashville and we all did sort of we all did our time sort of as session players and touring with other acts
yep,
and really cutting our teeth with some of the best and real deal bluegrass musicians. And I feel like in our jam where we play like it's whatever you want to call it, jam grass or whatever it is, there is like a niche within
yep,
that we play in that scene. And I think one of the things that separates us that in that scene is that we did actually do sort of that Nashville time. But it's and there's a lot of other bands like I would say like Billy Strings who's out there who's he lives in Nashville and he's he's got all those same sort of bluegrass chops. But I don't think you need those bluegrass chops to make great bluegrass music. I mean, it comes from all different places and it comes from all different ways. And there are a lot of really great, and I look up to all the bands that are on our scene. It's just great to see them doing it. But yeah, if you go to trad bluegrass, they may not like our scene or any of these other band scenes, and that's a shame because I think that I think it could all integrate really, but it's almost like a cultural divide or something.
Well,
So.
we have a question too. Jesse Hugh Jessol is asking, what is it like playing the Red Rocks in Colorado? But I'm going to follow that question up too, just to kind of relate it to what you're currently talking about. What was it like playing that show? But also, was there ever an act where you had to open up for them, where you were like, ooh, like that we're all the stuff we're talking about, like it's not really the perfect pair, and you don't know how their fans are going to take it, but then you're like, oh, okay, you play and then the crowd likes you. Did you ever have one of those moments with like playing before an artist?
Um, you know, yeah, I think that that happens sometimes. Like one of the times we played Red Rocks was with JJ Grey, and Mofro, which is more of like a soul act, and he's incredible. And it is kind of like a little bit of a different scene, sort of like the jam grass scene, and then like there's sort of like the soul scene. It is kind of a little bit of a different thing, but that show was great. We had a great time, and we've done, we love JJ, and we've hung with him a bunch, and we've actually done some. I think maybe we did like a Christmas tune or something one time, like a video. I don't know, but it's we like to you know
Yeah.
cross genre and mix and match, and I think that's like a really good thing.
Well, that's what I like of you guys. Like so far, the stuff that I've seen is like you guys have like the songs for sure, but you also know how to play. You guys are definitely your live show seems like you guys can go. You could do you sometimes do right. You do a whole show where you just jam the whole time, right?
I mean, our shows are every night's different, and like probably I wouldn't say like necessarily it's like a jam the whole time, but like we do have parts of the show where we have like transitions that might be going. We know it's going from one song to the next, but we don't exactly know what's going to happen in the middle.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, okay, there's going to be a jam here, and we know where we're starting, we know where we're going, and it's like let's just see where it goes.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the part of like the Grateful Dead or Fish or whatever, like that influence of like just being sort of wide open and everybody listening, and those kinds of jams that sometimes go great, and sometimes and that's part of the jam, right? It's like, well, where is it going to go? Is it really going to go over the top this time? Yeah, obviously you always try to make it go there, but I think that's like just listening and reacting in real time, and then that is in conjunction with songs and structure and all that, which is important to us as well.
Yeah.
So we try to kind of have all those things, mainly because I think what you need to do as an artist is you need to always be doing what's genuine to you and doing it the way that you want to do it, because you can't just play jam music or jams because you want to jam, because it's going to suck.
Yeah.
Like, really, because it's not going to be real. It has to be sort of from a real place, and what matters to us is songs. We love
Yeah.
songs. We like playing songs and structured songs and arranging them,
Yeah.
and but we also like to jam, so our show kind of has a little bit of all of that.
I think if my band's not structured like this, but I always had a fantasy of like having a band like yours where everyone gets to jam, but at the end of the show, like a sports team, like when someone is either really good or really bad, they'll like give them like like a jacket or a hat to wear, like you win the prize. You guys should do one for either whoever plays the best or whoever blew it. like one
Right.
one guy should get like this nice gold jacket, and someone else should get like I don't know some hat to wear that's terrible.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. I know. That would be right. Some sort of merit based. I think the way our band is generally, like, if you didn't have a great night, it's punishment enough. You kind of walk in like where you're hanging your head like But that's the nice thing about our band is that we're really good friends. We love each other, and we support each other, and I think the nice thing about our band is I feel like we always, everybody in the band gives 110% every single night.
Yeah.
And some nights if I'm having like a tougher night, I just know that okay, this is not my night tonight, but I know that there's four other guys on the stage that are gonna cover that, no problem.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's a really good feeling to have, that you just feel like that it just, I feel very lucky to play with each and every one of them.
Yeah. Well, there's a gentleman named Eric Stratton on the page. He's just praising you. He loves everything you do. He's just been commenting the whole time, so we'll give him some love. But he has asked, what was it like to replace Chris Eldridge? And what I know of Chris Eldridge is that he's one of the best in the business. So what's it like filling those shoes? Are you like Sammy Hagar and he's David Lee Roth? Like how did that work?
It was a long time ago, and Chris is a good friend and an incredible musician, and yeah, it was like scary, at that time. That was back in 2007, and when it became when it became official that I was going to join the band, you know, they had played, they were still playing. You know, Chris knew he was leaving, but he was still doing shows with them. You know, we got together several times, and he would kind of sit with me and be like, well, here's what I'm doing on this, and oh, and there's something about this tune that's kind of quirky and weird, and this is what it is. And so, like, you know, we worked together for a bunch, you know, and I did my own homework too, of course, because I was terrified. I had to sort of fill these giant shoes, you know. So that was like really scary, and ultimately it was like the support of Chris and the support of the band,
Yeah.
and the support of the fans, you know, on that first show, which was in Durango, Colorado, on the first weekend I played with the band, and the first set, the fans were like so kind to me, and they, you know, were really nice, made me feel, and the band especially was like really, you know, made me feel welcome. And so I was able to kind of make that transition. As much as I was feeling very self-conscious about it, I was able to make that transition really, you know, confidently, and it was thanks to, you know, like I said, number one, the band, Chris, and the fans. You know.
That's awesome. Well, you guys put on your band actually puts on a festival, which is really ambitious. It's amazing. Called Feste, obviously. What are you guys
Yeah,
doing now?
and we're not. That's been a few years since we started that festival, and it still happens, but we're not involved with it anymore, because it would just got to be and it was an amazing thing to sort of put together. At the time, you know, we were sort of more based in that area, and it just, you know, having a honestly, like for a band, you know, it's hard enough in our sort of world, you know, with the touring and making records. It just became harder to really be able to put the focus that we wanted to into it. And you know, when we first started it, it was like we were able to put a lot of energy into it and curate it exactly the way we felt it should be. But then as we couldn't sort of do that anymore, and then it just becomes sort of more somebody else's baby, it becomes harder to sort of, you know,
Manage it.
you really, you feel like you're not, you know, and now it still happens, and you know, he's still doing it, and it's a great festival still, but we're just not sort of connected to it anymore. But it was an amazing, you know, to be a part of that whole thing, you know, as it was going on.
That's awesome. I had to ask because, you know, obviously festivals.
Yeah.
It's hard to even just book a festival being in a band. Never mind dealing with all this. But I got to ask you.
Yeah.
So you guys won a Grammy. I want to see it. You have it. I know it's in your office. Pull it out. Show
Yeah.
everybody. Let's play show and tell.
It's on the piano.
Go. Gotta grab it.
All right. So so here, this is it.
So what do you say? What do you say when you win that? I mean, or not even what do you say? What are you thinking? Do you immediately go out and buy a Ferrari or a spaceship to drive to all your shows, or?
No, I was wondering if anybody wanted to bid. You know, you know, it really is. It's one of those things that you know, it's like such an incredible honor. You know, obviously, it's you know, to be recognized and to you know, to have that experience is absolutely incredible. And you know, at the end of the day, you know, no, the next day you're just kind of thinking about, you know, again, you're the next record, and you know, it's like, you know, awards are incredible, and like I say, it's great to be recognized, you know, certainly. But you know, there's a lot of bands out there that never, you know, win a Grammy, and they're making, you know, it's about the art really is the most important part. And I think, you know, you have to always kind of keep that in focus. And you know, but that being said, I will say that it is, you know, something where when you're having a tough day, or you know, it's hard work doing this, and you know, all you're really trying to do is you know, communicate with people, right? This is what this is all about. It's all about expression and creating, you know, your art, and for us, it's like a lot about sharing that experience with the audience and in the live shows, and you know, and when you are having a tough go, or you just kind of feel like, you know, because everything happens so, you know, your growth happens so slowly over a long period of time. And you know, it is kind of nice when you kind of look at the piano, or if I'm writing over here or something, and you kind of look up at it, it gives you a little bit of like, all right, I feel like maybe you're making some sort of progress in communicating with people. But really, it's like about the people. And I think like a really nice thing about that award in that year is I think that they're in our sort of corner of the jamgrass, world. I think we're, in our little, amongst our sort of peers, maybe we were the first band to sort of bring that to our sort of scene and in our immediate scene. And we feel, I think that was like cool because hopefully that will bring also attention to some of these other bands that are out there that are freaking awesome.
Yeah.
And hopefully they will also get to enjoy that whole thing as well, and get, because they deserve it. So
no, that's amazing. After listening to you guys are well deserving of it. Congratulations on that. So amazing. I definitely like to have a little fun with you too. There's got to be something that comes along with that award. Like, you receive such a prestigious award. Like, is there like a special rule that they give you that, like, if you're in a musical argument with somebody else and they don't have a Grammy and you do you pull it out and you automatically win that argument? Like, how does it go? Like, is there any type of like cool things you get along with winning something like that?
hey, I think there's lots of bands in our scene that they could sell more tickets than us, and they don't have a Grammy. So
yeah, like Michael Jackson
could,
like, you could be having that argument, you could pull it out, then Michael Jackson could have walked in with like 10 of them in his hands, and then you lose.
Right? Yeah. There's always I think it's I think it is one interesting thing about it, when you do get the award. And you are back in the backstage zone, and you're doing like the pictures and stuff. They just have like generic Grammys that they have there for the pictures and stuff.
Yeah.
But they make you hold it a certain way. You can't like. And then there was actually somebody, because when we got the Grammy, we were with Compass Records,
Yeah.
And there was somebody from the label that was there that was like back there with us. And then at one point she's like, "Oh, let me take a picture with you guys," and holding the guy. And they like wouldn't let her hold the Grammy. They're like, "No, you can't. You're not allowed."
Yeah,
to,
don't touch it. Don't look at it.
Yeah, you're not allowed to hold it. It's like, oh, okay. Like, they're very, and also like one thing that is kind of cool. It's like you do get like this. Also get like this watch that they make.
Oh, there you go. That's awesome.
And it's kind of engraved and stuff. So that's kind of fun.
So that's So if you're at your house and you have that argument, you can pull out the Grammy. If you're on the street, you can just pull out the watch.
Oh, right? Yeah, I do the watch.
Like, I know more than you.
Yeah, but really, it's like, all kidding aside, it's like an honor to get it. But yeah, it's like there's lots of great bands out there that are also deserving of those awards, and I just hope that some of the bands on our scene, more of our bands on our immediate scene, start picking up some as well, because I think that would be awesome. They deserve it.
That's awesome. So real quick before I let you go, what gear are you using for Fishman? Let's tie this into what you're using. What are you into?
Sure. Well, I'm always been a big fan of the Aura, and so my whole rig is the tone is based on having the Aura, and I have I actually run an Aura 16. Yeah, and I have one of those as well, and that's the Spectrum DI, which is awesome, and has the built-in Aura.
Yeah.
Which I've used that, and that's also really handy because you have the DI and everything on sort of one unit.
Totally.
My rig is a little bit more customized, so I have like an Aura 16, Matrix Infinity, pickup.
Yep.
And it runs into the Aura 16, and it's just, it always delivers like a great, it takes away any of the sort of quacky pickup stuff. And I use like a different, sometimes if I'm playing like with the Dusters, we don't have any drums or anything like that. These days I keep it, a little bit more on the Aura side, maybe 75%. But we have, if I ever play with drums or anything like that, you can back it off, and sometimes it sounds almost more natural, if you back it off when you're playing with more electric instruments. But I've been a big fan and supporter of the Aura system, because I just think I've tried a lot of different things, and that is certainly, to me, like what sound, and the ears, the in-ear monitors, they're very they're very unforgiving. So I think originally when I started using the Aura, that was the thing. It was like, you could plug a regular Matrix Infinity into a DI, get it sounding decent in a monitor or whatever. But like once you put in the in-ears, it was like very like, and the Aura really just brought it back in sort of an acoustic sound that, you never, and also, I think you never, if you're trying to make your guitar sound exactly like it does, acoustic guitar, exactly like it does in a room,
Yep.
You're doing something with an acoustic guitar that's not designed to do, right? So
Totally.
so the main goal, I think, for people who do play and they're looking for something is to try to just get something that sounds musical, and
Yep.
and I think the Fishman stuff has always been a part of that in my rig, and the Aura was like a game changer.
Yeah.
So,
And I think your front house guy, since all the stuff goes right out to the house, he's probably very happy with that. That's awesome.
Yeah, and he and that's the thing, and we've and the thing with the Aura is like I'll spend a day if I get a new guitar,
yeah,
listening to different patches, because you can download them all, and you can go through, and having a front house guy helps too, because he can sort of say, well, that patch, if you can find something that has a little bit more low end or whatever, you can kind of go through the patches and then get 3 or 4 and then go to a sound check and like narrow it down, and then he can be like, yeah, that's the one. And then once I get it, I literally put tape over my Aura on the knob.
Yeah.
And then I never have to think about it ever again, and it just sounds great every time.
Are you using it or have you tried to apply it to the new guitar that you were talking about earlier? I think it was the Bourgeois guitar.
Not yet, because that doesn't even have a pickup in it yet, because they just sent it over to check out the model, which is called the Odyssey.
Nice.
By Bourgeois, and it's something that I sort of helped them, in the design process of it, a little bit, just kind of going back and forth, and it's a little bit different. Like we were thinking of it like a modern dreadnought, like a dreadnought, but for a gigging musician. So it has some appointments that are sort of geared towards that, but yet still being able to maintain the powerful sound of a dreadnought.
That's awesome.
So yeah, and that's kind of like what I've been. In fact, I could show it to you. It's right over here. But it doesn't have any, they just kind of sent the model over.
Nice.
So it has, an oval sound hole with like an X-brace back, because it's a slightly thinner body.
Yep.
It has like the beveled edge, and it's, kind of, and the cutaway, which is,
it's beautiful.
So yeah, I've just been kind of fooling with it, and then, hopefully, when all this stuff passes and we can get back out, I can get one to, and then have it outfitted with my whole electronics rig, and
let us know. We'll send you one.
yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And Chris always, you guys are always, I got to say, Fishman, companies like you, D'Addario here on Long Island. Yep. There's several companies out there that are really, keep us going, and we really do appreciate every bit of it, and really help us out, not only with great sounds and and great products, but also just the support that you give us, really makes it possible for us to do what we do, and we appreciate it.
That's awesome. Well, hey, listen, we really appreciate you and the bandmates using our stuff, and thank you for like the long history that you've had with us. Honestly, it's been great, and we're super happy to see you guys as successful as you have been. But
thank you.
I think we're gonna stop it there, guys. Thank you so much for watching this feed. This was Andy Falco from the Infamous Stringdusters. Andy, thank you so much for having us. And
thanks for having me. Appreciate it. It was great to hang some.
Yeah, definitely. And when you come to Boston, I'm gonna come out to a show. Bring all my metal friends, and we're gonna listen to you guys.
Dude, come on, bring it on.
I'll hit you up. All right, brother. Take it easy.
All right, thanks, man.
Bye.